right. Hello. I am Noel Walton with the Joint Chiefs of Real Estate Partners. Welcome to the Wealth Tank podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Tom Groves. And our guest today is Mr. Rasool Mutawakkil. Thanks for joining us, Rasool.
Thanks for being here, man.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure. I love it. Thanks for having me. I'm proud to be your very first guest. You guys are going to do some awesome things. I see what you do in real estate, and then spreading that knowledge and getting that out to the masses is going to be like incredible for everybody.
We're super excited to have you on board today, Rasool. I know we've been friends for a while and really been connected through the same network.
Mm-hmm.
But really want to dive in today a lot and talk a lot about your history of the last couple of years in commercial real estate, how you've gotten over 3,000 doors as a general partner in commercial real
That's
estate.
awesome.
Yeah.
and more about, your initial start as a U.S. Army veteran. And now obviously you're just killing it. You're a master networker. And so love to, talk more about that. So Rasool, tell us more about you, where you came from, and how you got to where you are today.
I actually literally just now, when you had made those two correlations of my history in commercial multifamily and the fact that I was a veteran, it just reminded me that even from a very young age, I graduated high school. I had a good GPA. I was like 4.3. Did really good in math and science, excelled in those things, physics, calculus, and whatnot. But for whatever reason, I just did not want to go to college. I was like, I've been in school for like my whole life. I want to just be different. And a military recruiter came and talked to me, and luckily for him, I had just watched Full Metal Jacket, and I liked the videos, the whole entire pitch about joining the military and whatnot. And I was like, oh, this is different. This is off the beaten path. At least in my mind, it was, right? Because everybody I knew, like we are all taught the same success formula. You go to school, you get a degree, you go get a good job, you work for 40 years, and hopefully you have enough money in the stock market, and then maybe you can retire before you get incapacitated from being too old to live your life, right? And I was like, that's not me, man. I gotta do something going different.
What a plan.
Yeah, what a plan, right? And so I was a little bit on the fence about whether or not I really wanted to join and sign up. I was like, is that really what I wanted to do? And then all of a sudden, I'm hanging out with my girlfriend and at the time, and we see on the news 9/11 happened, and then boom, switch went off. Time to go, call to action, right? So it's like, that sense of urgency was placed in me. I talked to the recruiter. I went to MEPS, did my little duck walk in my underwear with everybody else, right? I don't even know if you guys remember doing that.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Memories.
Yeah. And they test your flat footness, all that stuff. But from then, man, I just, I maxed out the ASVAB. I went in as military intelligence as a Korean linguist, which was a lot of fun. Spent my first year overseas by myself, away from family and whatnot. And that just showed me that whatever the masses are doing, right? I know it's like there's something else. I don't want to be just herded around like a sheep, right? So when it came to commercial multifamily, at that point in my life, I had actually drunk the Kool-Aid. I went to college. I got the good degree. My degree's in video game programming. I got the career, federal employee, climbing the ladder in the ranks and everything like that. And by the time I made it to like that coveted 6-figure income, I stopped and I looked at the last, 10 years of what I was really doing, and then what the next 10 years would look like. And, for me, I ascended pretty quickly into like a GS-13, which is like a pretty high level in the federal government. And by that time, I saw all the old timers who were just dying or retiring, and they're just miserable. And I was just like, that's a glimpse into my future if I keep it up, right? They're doing
that's motivation.
Yeah. And so I talked to my wife. She was also a federal employee. She was on the same hustle and grind. She was actually started in the government before I did. And we got together, put our heads together, like, babe, I was like, if you think about it, right? Because I'm not a big car guy, but I like nice cars, right? And I've always in my mind, it's like, I'm going to buy a Lamborghini one day, right? And you look at the price of these things, it's like $250,000. I was like, I could like work, let's say I'm making $100,000 a year after taxes, expenses, all this other stuff, right? I take home like, $60,000 a year. I would have to save everything that I would make, not eat, not pay for rent, not go out, not do anything. And I would have to save all the money that my job paid me, was at $240,000 for 6 years straight, just to be able to buy the thing, right? And I was like, when I see like there's other, I live in Miami. So I see these young 20-year-old somethings, 30-year-old somethings, they're driving around Lambos. I was like, these guys didn't do that. And so that's, it's like when you have that curiosity, you start to ask these questions and then the gears start turning a little bit more. Again, I'm a pretty smart guy, right? And then I just started waking up, taking the cobwebs from my eyes and seeing what really is out there. So my first thing was me and my wife, we Googled how do people get rich, right? And then it says 95% of millionaires are made in real estate. Seems like a pretty safe place to start, right? And from there, we found Bigger Pockets. A lot of people might be familiar with that. I watch podcasts from Brandon Turner, which is ironic because I work with him now, right? Indirectly as a partner, I'm with Disrupt Equity. He does Open Door Capital, and we partner on large multifamily deals. So I'll get to that point in a little bit. But for the people who are just starting out and they're trying to figure out like, what's my way out of the rat race? How do I get onto this track of financial freedom, personal freedom, time freedom, all of those things? Like you gotta, one, get into something where there's a high probability of success. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur and they don't understand the statistics. Again, math is my background, right? If you want to start a new business, 90% of those businesses will fail. Of the 10% that make it in year one, in year two, 90% of those businesses will fail. So I was like, well, okay, cool. 1 out of 100 will make it if you start your own business and any, across the board, versus 95% of people who get into real estate become millionaires. It was kind of a
and you don't lose your sanity in the meantime.
I'm having a blast, man. So the very first thing that I got into, some people might be familiar with, if you're not familiar, is the term house hacking. I learned how to like massively reduce, or in some cases, for some people, you can eliminate your cost of living expense, which is your number one expense. Most people pay the most on their mortgage or their rent or anything like that. And it's so like ingenious, because when we go and get our, traditional financing on a house, right? We get, a mortgage, but that mortgage applies to not only just a single family house, but you can get it on a duplex, you can get it on a triplex, you can get it on a fourplex even, right? And as veterans, I'm able to get a loan, 0% down. I get the VA loan, right?
Brilliant.
I didn't even realize that. I was thinking like, okay, well, I'm going to go the FHA route, because I wasn't even tapped into my military benefits at the time. I just didn't know. I was too busy on my corporate ladder climb and everything like that. So I was like, all right, let me get into real estate. And then I was following the traditional advice of what everybody else was doing in these real estate circles. So then I got a 5% down payment. It was still not bad. Conventional loan on this duplex in Miami. We lived in one side. Our mortgage was $2,100, and the rent for the other unit that we were renting out was $1,800. Right. So it cost me $300 a month to live in Miami on a property that I owned. I wasn't renting it out. Right. So that just started like opening up even more doors. It's like, holy crap. I'm saving, after all my expenses and everything like that, I'd be lucky if I was able to save like $1,000 a month. Right. I just eliminated friggin' $1,800 a month, or added $1,800 a month into my savings ability. So that 1,000 turned into 18. I more than doubled my savings capacity just by doing that one little trick. And then, the renter, the tenant, she actually wanted to do Airbnb in the unit she was renting from me. That was the agreement. But then she had like some sketchy things happen. I think at one point she got robbed while we were away and also this stuff. They were just taking stuff out of it. It was all her stuff. It wasn't mine, but me and my wife were next door. And I'm like, I don't like that. So I terminated my contract with her. And I was like, I looked at the numbers on Airbnb and I was like, babe, look at this. Airbnb in Miami, right? This is back in 20.
No brainer.
And I was like, I think we can do this better than she did, because she was weird and we're smart. We can figure this out. And so we did Airbnb. I still got pictures somewhere. I'll post them of me and my wife. She was pregnant at the time, so she had the belly and everything. She's painting the baseboards, and I'm fixing tiles and doing all stuff. We're just doing all this stuff manually. We didn't want to subcontract out because we had some cash, but we didn't really know about how to hire somebody to do it, because labor in Miami is expensive. So from there, we started doing Airbnb on that other unit, and we're like taken aback by how much more money you can make in Airbnb. And I told my wife, I was like, babe, hear me out. The gears are turning. I got another idea. What if we did Airbnb on both sides and we moved in with my mom and dad? because I'm from Miami, right? And
Nice.
he was
Nice.
down. He liked the idea. I mean, and it was awesome that we did that because that one duplex was pulling in $70,000 a year, right?
Wow.
Wow.
And that's on top
That's
of
net?
no, that's gross. But
Gross. Okay.
still, net. I mean, but again, my mortgage was $2,100
Hmm.
and maybe $500 in utilities. The
Yeah.
cleaning costs
Solid.
were off put to the guests who were coming in. So every time that my cleaners came in and cleaned, I paid them, but I was getting paid basically 50% what they were making, right? Which was amazing. So they were happy getting paid like, $75 a cleaning, and I was making I charge 100, right? Or 110 or whatever it was, depending on what it was. So I made roughly 40-50% of whatever the cleaners were making by them doing their work, right? Everybody was happy,
Yeah.
especially me. And so, I don't have to tell you about how the appreciation in Miami went from 2018 up until COVID. And it was right around
Yeah.
that time, the city shut down. And yes, I was making a lot of money in Airbnb, but the problem was I was spending a lot of time there. Because what they don't tell you, all these gurus about how to have property management handling your short-term rental, was that even if you have short-term rental property management companies, they suck. And they charge you a hefty amount, like 20-30% of your
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen
your
that.
gross rents, right? And so that's why I never really hired them. So it was all down to me to make sure that everything was done well for my guests, because I was checking guests in, I was checking guests out, and I was making sure that, whatever my cleaners were telling me, they kept an eye on the place, for whatever was broken, needed to be replaced, that I would just, pay to go get it, or I'd be going to do Walmart runs to go restock everything. And when COVID happened, it was a double-edged sword. I lost the income, yes, but I got back all of my time. And I was like,
Mm.
wow, I didn't realize how much time that I lost. I was even afraid of leaving on the weekends because weekends are always booked in Miami, right? But I couldn't go see my family in Orlando. My brother lives up there, my mother-in-law is over there. And so that made me start. And so COVID was right around March of 2020. That's when
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, okay, there's got to be a better way, because I cannot manage even one more property going at this. I had two doors and I was like
Hmm.
overwhelmed. And I was like, I know there's people out there who are doing, hundreds of units of real estate. How are they doing this? And that's when I found Rod Cleve's boot camp. And, I was like, oh, wow. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And
Light
then,
bulb.
yeah. And I did the successful entrepreneur's cheat code to success. I hired a mentor. I paid somebody who was doing what I wanted to do and had them teach me. And that's what I did. And that's where I met Noel and Tom. And we're all in the same mastermind, which was fantastic. And I learned everything that I needed to know to get started in multifamily. Didn't give me everything that I needed, but it gave me enough confidence and enough, competence to take action and say, okay, cool. I invested into my first deal as a passive investor shortly after, and with all that Airbnb money. And I was like, wow, now I'm tying what I'm learning in these courses to real life and seeing how the two come together. So now the gears are going, like, how do I put this on steroids? And so I said, all right, what am I really good at? How can I help the most number of people? And I'm real big into underwriting, right? Analyze, and for people who are watching, underwriting is basically just analyzing these apartment buildings and determining which ones have a really high probability of success, right?
Hmm.
By just, looking at projected rents, looking at the market, the demographics, the labor statistics, all these other things. It's not rocket science. It's a little bit involved in work, but once you start doing it a few times, then you get the hang of it, and then it's easy. At this point, someone can send me a deal. I can do one quick calculation in my calculator and determine whether or not I even want to look more into that deal, right? Somebody sent me a deal here last night, as a matter of fact, 160 some units in Miami, and it's $300,000 a door. I'm like, it's not going to fly,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it
Hmm.
depends, but most likely from where it's coming from and where it's located, $300,000 a door. I'm sorry, $300,000 a door is too expensive for this market. And so, um, with all of that skill set that I had of applying massive value, I was networking with as many people as I could. I met Noel, met Tom, and a bunch. I mean, I probably met thousands of people at this point, but early on, I didn't have anything of value. I made some money in Airbnb, but I didn't have millions of dollars to take down apartment buildings for myself. And I didn't have any commercial multifamily experience, just my residential duplex. So I had to have partners to come along with. How did I add value to them? I applied my analytical skills And then my analytical skills introduced me to some other people who really valued my insight to these properties, and they were willing to invest with me based on my judgment. And so I married all that together. So now I had deals that I was finding, I had capital that was bringing to the table, and I started putting them together, and I started throwing deals together, boom, 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 boom. And the beautiful thing about doing it that way is that I'm basically outsourcing all of the stuff that I don't want to do. I'm not swinging hammers. I'm not managing tenants, toilets, termites. I don't have to deal with property management. All I do is let my investors know how the property is doing, which we're always doing renovations and we're increasing rents, because I don't know if you guys who are renting have ever experienced this, but every time my rent renewal comes through, it had never gone down, right? Rents are always going. And it's just a matter of, can you get to a place where a property's rent is sufficiently below the market rent, the going average rent, where you can put some money and capital infusion into that building, improve the property, get those higher rents, and then still get enough of a good return to the investors. In a nutshell, that's what we do.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
So
that's awesome, man.
That's me, start to finish, man. Nose to tail.
That's awesome, man. And I appreciate you sharing that. And it really makes it tangible when you see someone who kind of came up through the ranks, went into the military, went through school, has different life experiences, did what was expected, and what's kind of routine. And then you just started to grow and steamroll. And now, like you said, you're at over 3,000 units.
Yeah.
And that's incredible. So I just have a quick question for you, if you want to touch base on this really quick. What advice do you have for veterans, being a veteran yourself? What advice do you have for veterans that, you will talk to or have talked to that are transitioning from the military? What, you may have a veteran, one of the key people that we try to reach out to here, as you look at those senior enlisted, those senior officers that may be in that GS-12, GS-13 job, and they've recognized what you have recognized at that time, saying, you know what, this is great, but I don't want to just die out in this job. I want to do something differently. To that individual, what advice would you give them?
To the guys who are coming out from the military, you're still relatively young, right? Because most of us join, I think, at least in my experience, I joined when I was 18. So 20 years of service puts me at 38, right? And so you're right around my age where I would have been now if I would have stuck and did my full 20, which I did not have the temperament to do that. I didn't even have the temperament to do my first 5, to be honest. But my advice would be, you're in a really, really good spot, because now you're getting out. You've got your military pension. You've got TRICARE for life. I would say if you're serious about wanting to grow beyond just the 9-to-5 life, because yes, your skills are transferable into the federal or I guess the corporate work life, right? You can go get hired at most jobs. If you want to get into the federal government, it's relatively easy to do so, because you actually get bonus bumps to get into a GS job over civilian counterparts. A lot of people don't know. I don't know if people know that or not, but because I was a veteran, I'm a disabled veteran at that. If you're at least, I think 30%, you get like 10 points on a scale of like 1 to 30. So you get like a huge, like 30% increase over people who are applying for the same job just for being a disabled veteran. So I would say it depends on what you really want to do, because honestly, entrepreneurial life is not for everybody. But if you have that itch or that calling that there is something more to life than just working 9-to-5 for 40 years and trying to retire at the end, then I would strongly suggest taking a really good look at real estate, right? And if you are gating out, use your VA loan on a fourplex. That's the very first thing that you should do. Eliminate your living expense altogether. If you got a family, you got kids and all that stuff, suck it up. Get in there. Just do it for a year, because after that first year, you can go ahead and move out of that unit and get into a single family house. Full disclosure, I did it sooner because I had a life-changing event when my wife got pregnant. She no longer wanted to stay in that duplex. So I had a reason to change my conventional loan which is a 5%. It's kind of like a similar thing, 5% conventional, 3.5% FHA loan, 0% VA loan. These are all loans that require you to use that loan on a property where you intend to live at least
Exactly.
1 year. It's the intention.
Mhm.
I intended to live in there, and I figured out all this other stuff in really short order. So I don't know if I said that too fast, but use your VA loan, buy a fourplex, and eliminate your living expense and receive cash flow. Because the way the math works is you live in one unit, two of the other units are covering your mortgage costs, right? If you buy it right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then that fourth unit is going to be your cash flow. So as a hypothetical example, let's just say it's a fourplex where it's bringing in $4,000 a month. Right, you're not collecting 1,000 from where you're living, or it's $2,000 a month to buy to pay the mortgage on that thing. Two of the units are paying 1,000, so that's taking care of your mortgage. You're pocketing 1,000 from that fourth unit, which is going to be used for like different repairs, vacancies when people move out or whatever it might be. But you're not paying your share of the rent for wherever you live. And you can adjust that for whatever market you're in. A fourplex here in Miami will probably command like $8,000 a month in rent, right? If you're in the Midwest, where I was living at the time in Kansas City, you can rent something for really, really cheap. I can buy a house for like 200 grand.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's awesome advice though. And
Yeah.
I mean, and that's regardless of whether or not, I mean, if you qualify for the VA loan, it doesn't matter if you've done your 20 years or you've done the time that you've done, Noel's done, or I've done, that's irrelevant. The opportunity is the same.
Yep.
And that's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, appreciate that, Rasool. That's good stuff. And so I had another question I wanted to ask you as well is, this is kind of more of a really interesting, metaphorical type question, but if you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, getting a message out to billions of people, what would it say and why?
Oh man, when you're talking to that many people, golly.
That's a tough question.
That's a tough question because, when I do these podcasts, I've been on a number of them right now, and it's always focused on the target audience of people who are watching and how can I give financial literacy advice, real estate advice, stuff like that. When you're talking about something to that scale, I'm going above and beyond what we're doing here in real estate, and you're talking to just people. I would honestly, I would have it say, be kind. Right. I think, and the reason why is because too many of us and kind of we live in our own little bubbles, right? And we don't want other people's bubbles encroaching on ours. And then when it does, there's this friction, because I've taken the approach, right, where I grew up, right? I grew up in not the greatest part of Miami. And if you look at somebody the wrong way, that might start a fight, right? And so, walking around, head down, keep to yourself, all this other stuff. But the reality is, when you get out into other parts of the world, especially when I lived in Kansas City in the Midwest, I can't say enough, praises about the Midwest. The only bad thing about the Midwest is the winter. And the winter lasts for a disproportionate amount of time compared to the other seasons. But other than that, man, the people out there are absolutely wonderful. And I'd never experienced that anywhere that I've been, except for maybe Korea. But everybody's just so welcoming and nice. And I remember I was out, I took my car into the shop one day. I sat down on the curb and I was just waiting for my car to get fixed. And this old dude, he's probably like 70 years old, sat next to me, and he just started chopping it up. And we just sat there and talked for like 45 minutes. And then he's like, well, my vehicle's done. It was nice talking to you, young man. And I was like, never in my life. I was probably 31, 32 years old at the time when I experienced this. And it's just like, you just I don't know. We just sat down. He saw I was by myself and he started talking to me. So I would say, yes, have a big billboard that says, be kind. Or maybe I would have it say, go out and be kind, to make it more intentional, not just like an afterthought, but like, hey, take action, go out there and be kind to somebody. Right. That's my refined answer. Go out and be kind.
Great advice. Like it. Yeah. Very cool. All right. So and leading into, obviously you told your story, phenomenal story, how you got into this business in commercial real estate. And one of the things I know, people are scared a lot of times of failing, so they never take action, right? So, obviously those of us who have taken action and gotten places with our career in real estate.
It's good that
What
European connection.
people like to call a failure, right?
Yeah.
But you have to look at it differently than it being a failure. But what, for the purpose of this question, I'll use the term failure. We like to call them seminars or lessons, right?
Lessons learned.
Yeah, exactly. Lessons learned, AAR, after action reviews, right? But
Yeah.
what would you say, what was a major failure or lesson that you encountered in your journey that really set you up for later success?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, and I think because everybody sees me in multifamily and what I've done in this short amount of time, right? Because I first learned about commercial multifamily investing in July of 2020, and here we are in February of 2023 with over 3,000 doors. Like, oh my God, how did he do it? What people didn't see is what happened from when I was 18 years old all the way up to that point. And there's that whole entire time is just completely littered with failures. And even before that, even before the military, I remember I started a couple of MLM companies, multi-level marketing, all right, network marketing, they call it. I sold Herbalife. I did Legal Shield. This is while I was in high school, right? I did YTB, which went bankrupt as like a Ponzi scheme or something like that. Your Travel Biz, and it got renamed into something else. Golly, I've tried so many things. After I graduated college and I got my degree in video game programming, I was in the midst of the Great Recession. I couldn't even get a job as a programmer back then, right? Which is kind of reminiscent of times right now where Amazon and Google and all these, tech companies are laying off tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of employees, right? Like, pay attention, people, for what's coming in the very near future, right? And so I think it's so important to get educated in how to handle and manage real estate, because this is going to be our, probably biggest once in a lifetime opportunity for us to capitalize on what's happening. But before I go into all that, failures. After I couldn't get a job, utilizing this degree that I just paid $80,000 for, right? I got into life insurance sales, and I was so bad at life insurance sales because another thing that people don't know about me is that growing up, I was a very shy person. I was absolutely terrified to talk to somebody. If you told me that I had to get on stage or get in front of the class and talk to somebody, I was shaking like a wet chihuahua, right? Like I would visibly, like I would feel my heartbeat just like pushing me around, like, no, don't make me do this, right? And so I'd have to the point of tears. Like I was just bad. And so when I had this, the reason why I took the sales job is because I needed to pay out these student loans. My deferment was coming up, right? And so which I didn't even realize that the interest is still accruing against me at that whole entire $80,000 balance. They don't tell you these things, right? Deferment is not a good thing. You can defer payments, but you're not deferring the interest accrual, right? So that's another thing we can talk about at another point. But I was like, all right, well, my student loans are going to start coming due, and I'm running out of VA loan money. I had my GI Bill money. And so I took this job. I was like, okay, I'm going to learn how to do sales. And thank God that I stuck with it long enough to figure it out. But my very first sales call, I was out at a client's house with my manager because he did the first part of the pitch, and then I was going to do the second part. So he just teed him up and then passed it over to me. And it goes exactly like this. Ready? This is my first sales call. I'm sitting on the couch, client's here, manager's here. And I'm like, hello, Mr. Client. My name is
not nervous at all.
Oh my God. And I look at my manager real quick. I just see his eyes. He's like, oh my God, what are you doing? He mouthed it to me. He's like, I forgot my name. I was so scared. And so talk about being a failure. I don't think anybody in the history of sales can say that their first call was worse than mine. I was in person. I mean, this lady just, she still ended up buying like a small, like $15 a month policy or something. I was selling life insurance at the time. But eventually I got really good at sales, and I ended up burning out because I thought that I didn't know how to teach people how to sell the way that I sold, right? I didn't have a good formula for that. So I was a great salesperson, but a terrible sales manager. So I could never grow beyond me just hustling out in the streets and doing that. And that's what burned me out eventually and got me to be like, you know what, I'm done with the sales life. Let me go back to the whole prescribed plan. Let me get back on track. I got the degree already. Let me go get the corporate job. I started a company called Cerner doing tier 3 tech support. I did that for like less than a year before I got fired, because that annual salary of working 8 to 10 hours a day, plus weekends, plus on call and all this stuff was like $50,000. I was like, bro, I can go back and sell life insurance for like 2 days a week and make that, right? Like the time commitment didn't make sense to me. And then after I got fired from Cerner, another failure, because I'm not made for that, hardcore, just high pressure 9 to 5 performance job. So that's why I get with the federal government, right?
Yeah, right.
My wife said, you should apply for the federal government. And so I did. I applied, and at the time I actually had my real estate license. That was another thing that I tried and failed at, and I didn't, but I had the license, was on my resume. So maybe that's why HUD reached out to me and said, hey, you should come in for an interview. And so I bombed the HUD questions. I had no idea about any of that stuff, but the personality questions, because I was such a good salesman, they loved me and they gave me a shot. They gave me, I came in as an account executive, which is basically in multifamily of all things. I started off in HUD and multifamily, not knowing the gold mine that I was.
That's awesome.
And all the connections that I could make. But I was on the opposite side. I was a cog in the machine, right?
Yeah, you were the W2 side of things.
Yeah,
exactly.
I was a pod in the matrix ecosystem, and I was too busy focused on how do I go from $50,000 a year to $100,000 a year. And even I remember this one specific assignment I had. It was they call it an IRL, interest rate reduction loan. And basically it's a cash out refinance on a multifamily property. And I was like, I'm signing this one form and somebody out there is making, $500,000. Like that's 10 years of my annual salary right here.
Yeah.
Just for me signing off on this form. But it wasn't a big enough, I didn't make that connection there. The gear didn't turn. I was just like, all right, next assignment. I just go on. I didn't ask a question. I was like, how is it that there's somebody out there getting paid $500,000 at the stroke of a pen, right? That's the kind of question you got to ask yourself. Like the things that are happening. Like if you just stop and you look around from wherever you're at, right? Look at all the real estate that's around you. The bigger the building, the better, because somebody owns it, and it could be you if you learn how. If you learn how.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No,
yeah,
I think that's really cool, man. That and vulnerable to kind of share your failures, because we all have failures, and oftentimes we're too proud or whatever, even to recognize them ourselves.
We're taught incorrectly in school from a very early age, because you go ahead and you take a test and all you got is all these red marks, and then you're made to feel bad about it. Oh, you got an F. I failed.
All my tests had red marks.
I failed math in 6th grade, by the way. Right?
Yeah, that's so true. It's put into you in society from a young age that failure is wrong, or
exactly.
you're a loser.
And the other thing is, if you try to work with somebody else during a test, it's called cheating. But no, most awesome successes are made with partnerships. You work together. You marry your strengths and your weaknesses together, right? And so I'm able to just help a lot of people. Not a lot of people are as analytical as I am. And it just so happens that I'm analytical and I'm also a little bit outgoing. So I'm not afraid of talking to people because of that. I had that sales background. And so all these things that I failed at in my past, right? I'm married. I didn't get my wife on here. Let's talk about some of my failures.
Right. That's a different discussion.
We get our spouses on here.
No, me and my wife are doing pretty fantastic.
That's awesome, man.
But yeah, man, the idea that we have about failure in general is just completely incorrect. It's so bad that and here's the interesting statistic. I'll ask you guys this question. I know you guys are interviewing me, but let me ask you this question. How many times do you think people try to do something new before they give up? Average across the board.
That's a great question. I don't have that answer.
Yes, I know the answer. Just
I'll say three times.
3 times for Tom. How about
Yeah, say 2.
2?
2 to 3.
Less than 1. Most people quit before they even try once.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Before they try once. That's how ingrained this whole matrix thing is about. hey, stay in the color in the lines. Don't go outside of the box. Don't think outside the box. Don't work with other people. If you make mistakes, then you're an idiot and you're bad, right? So if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it's going to grow up its whole life thinking it's stupid, and it's wrong.
So let me ask you really quick, and this is kind of off the cuff. Sure. You have an individual, they love their job, they've gotten out, and they've had successes, they've had failures, and they say, hey, you know what? I'm a GS13, I'm a GS12, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't want to take that step. I don't want to set myself up for failure. They may have that little bit of fear.
Sure.
How can they get involved in real estate if they don't want to take that step into taking something down themselves? What do you think some of the best ways for them they want to take some action, but they want to take safer action,
For sure. The best thing what I would do, because I'm in that situation, right? If you're able to the first thing you got to do is have a good sense of financial literacy, right? So that means getting your financial house in order. You need to know, even though you're making these big bucks, you need to make sure you're not suffering from what some people call lifestyle creep, because the more money you make, all of a sudden you go from driving a Honda to, like, I don't know what the next step up is.
The Grand Jeep Cherokee.
Grand Jeep Cherokee, right? And then worse off, you have it on a lease, right? So it's just like you're constantly losing money on that one. And then when that one is done, then you go, hey, I'm making more money now. I'm a GS13 step 5 or whatever. I can go ahead and afford that Beamer, right? I can go afford some nicer Mercedes or whatever it is. As your income goes up, your expenses go up. And that's why most people live paycheck to paycheck. So the very first thing is figure out where you can cut back on your expenses, right? Because the whole entire shiny object syndrome is going to be one of those, death traps for you financially. So get your financial house in order. If you learn how to manage your expenses at a really reasonable rate, case in point, my wife and I set a household budget when we first got married. And no matter how much money that we made, we always made sure we had money put away for our 401k, our TSP is what we have in government. We had money put away for our IRA, or individual retirement account. This is before I knew about investing in real estate, right? There's better ways to invest your money, but at the very least is where you can start off with, right? And we gave ourselves a monthly stipend of what she could spend and what I could spend. And when we first started off, it was $200 per month, right? We couldn't question each other about that personal expense, right? Because we're making, right? And between she and I, in the 4 years we lived in Kansas City, we got 7 promotions. And then we bumped it up to a whopping $400 a month. That's our budget. And anything over $150, we just have to tell the other person, just so they know, hey, by the way, I'm going to buy this. It's mine, but it's over 150 like we agreed. And we've kept that for a long time. Even now, which is it's weird to say, is because I only allow myself $400 a month of personal expenses, and even then, I don't use it. It just rolls up, and it's just maybe I'll use a few $1,000 to go buy a new computer here soon because this one's crapping out. I built it a long time ago. But once you have your finances under control and you're able to take the money that you're making from your W-2 and you're able to save up a decent, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year between you and your spouse, then I think you can get the best thing to do personally is get involved in multifamily syndications from the passive investor side. So what we do when we buy these apartment buildings, I'm on the active side as a general partner. Yes, I'm doing some of the work, the analytical, finding the deal. But when I talked about it earlier, when I said, hey, I'm finding investors who want to put their money into me, those investors, all they bring to the table is the capital. They bring their capital to the deal, and then they kick back and they relax and they wait for their quarterly checks to come into the mail. Most people do ACH because who wants to go cash a check at the bank and wait in line?
Exactly.
Right? But you get my point. You can go ahead and earn mailbox money. And the reason why that works is because the structure of a deal, which is funny, I actually have a group of students that I teach multifamily to every single week. And this week's lesson was about deal structure. The way that the reason why we do these deals is because when you see apartment buildings, when they're purchased, the structure of that deal typically, most times, is 30% goes to the general partners and 70% goes to the investors, the limited partners, right? And so we give them that much of the property because financially we're able to get them solid double-digit returns, 15, 20% returns on their money, and they do no work for it. Versus versus if you put your money in the stock market like I was doing, well, I used to do. I don't do it anymore, thank God, because I see what's happening right now in the market, right?
Same.
What happens is you put your money in the stock market. You have your ups, your downs, the roller coasters. Right now, we're in a very, very down time, right? And when COVID hit on, everybody who's investing in their 401ks are like, oh my God, I'm making all this money. This is amazing. If you didn't know to sell in April of 2022, then right now you're worse off than you were, except that now you've lost 3 years of your life financially.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I don't do the stock market anymore, right? Because I see the game for what it is. But on average, if you stick with it long enough for this whole 40-year plan that you're supposed to stick to, you will make about 10% on your money as long as you leave it in there. Compounding is what they say, right? But it comes out 10% returns. The problem with it, there's a lot of problems with it. Number one, you can't touch that money until you're 59 and a half. Why? It's that question. Why can I not touch my money that I put in there for my work, right? If you take it out, what happens? You get taxed and you have a penalty on it. 25%. Like that's worse than what they were doing in the short-term management side to me, right? 25% penalty. And here's a very real life example about why this is so bad. During COVID, a family member of mine had a construction company. It was Ashley's cousin's husband, right? So I call him family. Had a construction company, and it was doing very bad in the middle of COVID. He was running out of money, so he had to tap into his 401k. He pulled out that money. He lost 50% after all of a sudden done, the taxes, fees, and all this other crap of the money that he's been putting away. I mean, they're a little bit older than us. He's like almost 60 or whatever. Can you imagine losing half of your life's savings because you put your money in the wrong vehicle? So that's one of those things that I say, hey, ask this question. Why am I getting penalized for putting my money into this thing that I know was supposed to be the thing to do for success? Aside from all of that, let's just look what happens in the long run. You make 10% on average for your earnings, but then when you go and pull it out, you get taxed, right? You have long-term capital gains tax. But if you want to try to eke it out and just say, hey, you know what, let me make it to Social Security so Social Security can carry me over into my later years, because you're trying to like eke out a little bit more of that retirement, right? If you're retiring right now, I feel bad for you, because now you're at the lowest point that your account will have been in the last few years, and you have to take what's called an RMD if you're over 72 years old, required minimum distribution. If you don't take that money out, right? So before 59, they'll penalize you 25%. At 72 and beyond, if you don't take the money out, they're going to penalize you 50%.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So
lose-lose.
So I don't even know we were talking about it initially, but yeah. Oh, about what people can do with their money. So wake up, ask the questions about, why am I putting my money into a 401k? Oh, because the company gives me 100% match. Up to what? 3, 4, 5% maybe?
4 or 5% max.
Right. Yeah. Like they're giving you these crumbs, right? Like Bank of America cracked me up. They're like, oh, if you keep over $100,000 in this account, we're going to bump you up to a preferred platinum client. Oh, so what does that mean? It's like, well, you get 25% extra interest. I was like, okay, what's the base interest? 0.001%. Okay.
Right.
So I give you $100,000 in cash that's just sitting there doing nothing, not working for me, not in my real estate, not stocks or whatever.
And this absolutely goes to show that the education is what matters. People aren't educated, and they make the wrong decisions, and it comes back to bite them later. Absolutely.
So we're taught wrong about failure. We're not taught financial literacy at all. We're not taught about tax advantages that people take, right? And they say, that's why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. I was like, there's a little bit of truth to that, but the reality is if you're poor and you start adopting habits that rich people have, then you become rich. The same way, if somebody is rich, let's just say, man, and I'll use this term rich.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. Let's just say if you're somebody who's rich and you adopt poor habits, then you will become poor, right? So if you just do what rich people do, 95% of millionaires are in real estate, by the way. If you do what rich people do, then you become rich. If you do what poor people do, you become poor. This is the reason why lottery winners, right? People who come into a big financial windfall, right? This is why they lose it all in 5 years. This is why
100%.
when professional athletes who are getting paid millions of dollars sometimes end up homeless, because when people get rich, what's the very first thing they do? I'm gonna go buy a mansion. I'm gonna buy a mansion.
They want to live the life and look rich to everyone around them.
Look rich, bro. I'm telling you, man. You're looking at 3 millionaires over here. Look, what are we wearing? Let me take my watch off real quick.
Exactly.
But
no, Rasool, this has been phenomenal. Like, I think it's a great note to wrap up on, just for sake of time. But you know, this, and I know we could talk this all day, 100%.
For sure, man. I love talking to you guys.
I love it. But no, we really appreciate you jumping on today. Before we wrap up, tell our listeners where they can get a hold of you. What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, like I said, I do a little bit of multifamily education. You can find me on Instagram at Rasool, like my first name, RASOOLCRE, for commercial real estate. Find me on Facebook. I'd love to add you. I'm not at my 5,000 friend limit yet. Getting there. I'm over 3,000 now. Find me, my name first, Rasool Mutawakkil. LinkedIn, same thing as there. Reach out. Let me know that you heard me on the podcast. And if you have any questions, I'm always down to help guide people in the right direction.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rasool. And thank you for today for listening to the Wealth Tank podcast. It's been phenomenal.
Absolutely.
And this is it. To learn more about investing in multifamily real estate with the J Core Partners, check us out on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you're ready to take the leap with us, set up a call, and we're happy to connect.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks for coming, guys.
Yeah, take care.